Hi everyone, this is Arvind from MindMajix, and today I welcome you all to this amazing session on PySpark interview questions. Okay, so just to give you a brief background about PySpark. So PySpark is basically an open source distributed computing software. It helps to frame more scalable analytics and pipelines to enhance the processing speed. So it also acts as a library for large scale data processing in real time. So whenever you utilize PySpark in your applications, so you may expect a 10x increase in the disk processing performance and a 100x increase in the in-memory processing speed. So this was a brief background about PySpark, and there were some of the points that I mentioned here are the reasons why PySpark is very popular among the big data developers. Okay, so in this session, we will try to cover maximum interview questions that are most frequently asked in the actual interview. Okay, so basically what we have done over here is we have classified the questions into three categories. So the first set of questions is for the freshers. The next set of questions is for the experienced candidates. And then the third set of questions is the most frequently asked PySpark interview questions. So without any further delay, let's get started. So as I've already told you, the first category of questions is for freshers, and these questions are relatively easier than the next set of questions. So the first question over here is explain PySpark. So PySpark is a software based on Python programming language with an inbuilt API. It was developed in Scala programming language and it was released by the Spark community. So it supports the data science team in working with big data. So PySpark is a good option for doing more scalability in the analysis and the data science pipelines. And guys, as you can see on the screen, these are some of the features that you can mention in explaining the term PySpark. Okay, so now let's move ahead with the next question. So the next question is a very important question, and the question says, state the differences between PySpark and other programming languages. So PySpark has an inbuilt API, as we have already discussed, whereas in other programming languages, we need to integrate API externally from third-party applications. Apart from this, implicit communication can be done in PySpark, but it is not possible in other programming languages. The next one more point that you can mention is developers can use map to reduce function as PySpark is map based, and we can address multiple nodes in PySpark, which is impossible in other programming languages. The next question is, why should we use PySpark? So there are a few reasons for this. So due to the most helpful machine learning algorithms that are implemented in PySpark, we can use it in data science applications. So we can manage synchronization points and errors very easily using PySpark, and easy problems can be resolved quickly because all of the code is parallelized. The next question is, what are the main characteristics of PySpark? So there are a few primary characteristics of PySpark, such as nodes are abstracted. So this means that we cannot address an individual node in PySpark. Apart from this, network is abstracted. So what does this mean? So it means that only implicit communication is possible in PySpark. The next point is PySpark is based on MapReduce. Additionally, programmers provide a reduce and a map function for PySpark. And as we have already discussed, there is an API which is available for Spark, which is nothing but PySpark. So basically, PySpark is an Spark API for dealing with intensive data science applications or solving data intensive problems. The next question is, what are the advantages of PySpark? So there are a few points that you can mention in this question. So first of all, it is very easy to write. So for simple problems, it is very easy to write parallelized codes. Next, you can talk about is error handling. So framework easily handles errors when it comes to synchronization points. Apart from this, you can also mention algorithms. So most of the algorithms are already implemented in the Spark. The next point is in-memory computation. So through in-memory processing, Spark helps you to increase the processing speed. And the best thing is that the data is cached, and thus it allows to fetch data from disk every time. And this saves a considerable amount of time. So this is also the reason that why PySpark is faster. The next point is swift processing. So one of the significant benefits of working with Spark is that it provides a high processing speed of 10x faster on the disk and 100x faster in the memory. And last but not the least, it is fault tolerant. So Spark is specially designed to manage the malfunction of any worker node in the cluster, and this assures that the data loss is decreased to almost zero. And now the next question is basically an extension to the previous question. So apart from knowing the advantages, you must also know the disadvantages of PySpark. So the next question is, tell me some of the disadvantages of PySpark. So there are basically 2 points that you can mention over here. So while using the MapReduce process, we may face some errors, and it is more efficient for a significant amount of data. So we can face less accuracy when dealing with a small data set. So guys, this is a very important disadvantage, or you can say one of the prerequisites for using PySpark. So you need to have a significant amount of data. So data as in big data. So what do you mean by big data? So big data, which is generally very huge in size. Okay. So for small set of data, PySpark will be less accurate. The next question is, what do you mean by SparkContext? So SparkContext is a software entry point for PySpark developers. So when the developers try to launch this software, SparkContext will launch the JVM using the Py4j, which is nothing but a Python library. So this is the default process to provide as SC, or you can say SparkContext, to the PySpark API. So guys, for more reference, you can, in the actual interview also, you can draw this diagram on a piece of paper. So here you can see this is the local storage and this is the actual cluster. So this is the Python code and these are Spark workers. So basically, as you must be knowing, so Python is basically a master-slave architecture. So Spark worker basically means the slaves. Okay, so slaves interact with the Python code and this is the pipeline through which they are connected. And as you can see over here in the local storage, you have the local file storage, and this is the py4j library, which is a Python library. And here you have the Spark context. Okay, and using the Spark content, they interact with the help of sockets. So this is the overall data flow of using Spark context. The next important question is, explain SparkConf and how does it work? So once the developer wants to run the Spark API locally in a cluster, they need to use SparkConf to configure the declared data parameters. Okay, for example, we can write code such as conf equal to new SparkConf and dot set master, and inside this you can specify the local and the size of the local. Okay, so using this you can declare the particular parameters. So guys, over here while explaining this SparkConf, I've written a few lines of code. So based upon your experience or the concept that you know, you can mention a few lines of code to explain the working of SparkConf. The next question is, what do you know about SparkFiles? So to get the actual path of a file inside Apache Spark, we need to use the SparkFiles. So this is one of the Spark objects and it can be added through SparkConf. So we can access Spark jobs using SparkFiles. So we can get the directory path through SparkFiles and we can set the recursive value to true so that the directory will open. The next question is, why do we need to mention the file name? So developers can find out the files by their file names as the file extension is attached. So developers can understand the file names by the file name first portion. For example, setup is the first part of setup act.log. So the file name is a setup that developers can easily understand. So the next important question is, describe the get root directory. So the developers can obtain the root directory by using this method called get root directory. So this helps in obtaining the root directory, which contains the files using the SparkContext.add file. The next question is, what is PySpark storage level? So storage level defines how RDD, which is nothing but resilient distributed dataset, will be stored in a database. So it also determines the storage capacity and it focuses on data serialization. The next question is, explain broadcast variables in PySpark. So developers can save the data as a copy into all nodes. All the data are variable fetched from the machines and not sent back to the devices. So broadcast variables will do code block to save the data copy as one of the classes of PySpark. The next question is, why does the developer needs to do serializers in PySpark? So we can manage the data by serializers to tune in the process. So C-pickle serializers are most effective for Python PySpark. So it can handle any Python object, and there are other serializers like Marshall, which doesn't support all Python objects. The next question is, when do you use the stage info? So in PySpark, developers can see the information about the Spark stages by using the Spark stage info. So this is a physical unit that executes multiple tasks in computation. So Spark stage info is controlled by the DAG, which is nothing but directed acyclic graph, to process and transform any data. The next question is, which specific profiler do we use in PySpark? So only one profiler is supported in PySpark, and it manages the usages of the custom profiler data. So that means we can configure another profiler to maintain the output, and we need to also declare the required methods for custom profilers. And what are the custom profilers? So as you can see on the screen, these are the custom profilers such as add, dump, stats, and profile. So using add, we can add another profiler or add to an existing profile. So SparkContext buildup usually initiates the different profile classes. Then you have dump. So to dump all the profiles to a particular path, we need to use the dump profiler. Apart from this, you also have stats, using which we can get back all the gathered stats by using the stats profiler. And last but not the least, we have the profile. So we need to use this profiler to create a system profile as a defined object. The next question is, how would you like to use basic profiler? So by default, this is the standard profiler. So we can use this while doing conjunction in C profile and the accumulator. So guys, as you can see, using these methods, you can use basic profilers. And what are those methods? As we have already seen in the previous question, we have stats, dump, show, profile, add, and so on. The next question is, can we use PySpark in small dataset? So we should not basically use PySpark in small dataset. And the reason is that it will not help us much because its typical library systems have more complex objects that are more accessible. So it is best suited for large amount of dataset. So guys, the next important question is, what is PySpark partition? So PySpark partition allows you to split a large dataset into smaller ones using one or more partition keys. So you can also use partition by method to create a partition on multiple columns by simply passing columns you want to partition as an argument. So guys, as you can see over here, this is the basically the syntax that you can use for partitioning huge chunk of data into smaller sets. Okay, so how do you do that? So you have to use this method called partition by, and what are the parameters that you pass over here? So you pass the self and the asterisk, or you can say the star, whatever you can call it, and the columns that you want to partition. Okay, so based on few columns, you can partition your data set. The next question is, how many partitions can you make in PySpark? So in PySpark, you can create a task for each partition, and you can transfer the data from one partition to another using Spark shuffle operations. So by default, 200 partitions are created by DataFrame shuffle operations. Okay, so guys, with this, we have covered the freshers category of questions for PySpark. And now question number 21 onwards, we will be covering questions which are meant for the experienced candidates. So the next question is, tell me a few algorithms which are supported by PySpark. So as you can see on the screen, these are the algorithms that are supported by PySpark, such as MLlib.classification. Then you have MLlib.clustering. Then you have the SMLlib.fpm. You also have MLlib.linalg, or you can have this SMLlib.recommendation. Next, you have Spark.mllib and MLlib.regression. So these are some of the algorithms that are supported in PySpark. The next question is, tell me the different SparkContext parameters. So if you talk about the parameters of SparkContext, so here the cluster's master URL is one parameter from which it connects. Then you have the job name. Apart from this, you have the py files. So basically these are the .zip or .py files that need to be sent to the cluster and added to the Python path. Then you have the variables in the context of the worker nodes or the slave nodes. You also have RDD serializer, which is nothing but a serializer for RDD data. Then you have the conf, which is an object of the LSparkConf that allows you to set all of the Spark properties. And last but not the least, you have the joint stock company or the JSC, which is a Java Spark context object. The next question is, what is RDD and how many types of RDDs are present in PySpark? So guys, this is one of the most important questions of PySpark. So the complete form of RDD is resilient distributed datasets, which are the elements used to run and operate on multiple nodes simultaneously on the same cluster. So it can perform parallel processing as they use immutable characteristics. So once the developers create the RDD, they cannot change it anymore. Once any failure happens, this RDD will be recovered automatically. And basically, there are two types of RDDs in PySpark. The first one is the transformation. So this type of RDD is applicable in creating a new RDD or transforming any filter or map. And the second one is the action. So basically, this type of RDD performs some computations on the return values. So it sends data from the executor to the driver. The next question is, tell me the different cluster manager types in PySpark. So there are many types of clusters which are available in PySpark, such as local. So in local, it simplifies the running mode for Spark applications through APIs. Then you have the Kubernetes. So it helps in automated deployment and data scaling as an open source cluster. After that, you have the Hadoop yarn. So this type of cluster manages the Hadoop environment. Then you have the Apache Mesos. So in this cluster, we can run the MapReduce. And last but not the least, you have the standalone. So this cluster can operate the Spark API. The next question is, what do you understand about PySpark DataFrames? So basically, DataFrames can create Hive tables, structured data files, or RDD in PySpark. So as PySpark is based on the relational database, so this DataFrames organize data in the equivalent tables and place them in the named columns. So as a result of this, it has better optimization to compare the data sets. The next question is, explain SparkSession in PySpark. So we usually get entry in PySpark through SparkContext in the version 2.0, but from version 3.0, we can get into it by using the SparkSession. So it acts as the starting point to access all of the PySpark functionalities like the RDD or the data frames. So we can also use this to unify the API. The next question is, what do you know about PySpark UDF? So the complete form of UDF is user-defined functions. So it will be created when no functionalities do not support the PySpark library. So developers can create the UDFs by using the Python function and wrapping. So SQL or data frames can reject them. So guys, the next question is, describe PySpark architecture. So this architecture is mainly based on the master-slave pattern. So here the driver means the master node and the worker means the slave nodes. So worker nodes are the main operational point and the cluster manager can manage the whole operation on the worker nodes. The next question is, what do you know about the PySpark DAG scheduler? So the complete form of DAG is the directed acyclic graph. So it controls the scheduling layer of the Spark for executing the stage-oriented scheduled tasks. So this scheduler executes stages or the DAGs for each job. So developers can keep a track of all the stages in RDD. So even this DAG scheduler reduces the running time for each job. The next question is, which workflow do we need to follow in PySpark? So first, we need to create an input RDD on the external data. So these data can be taken from another source. Next, the intermediate RDD needs to be created for later purposes. Then the parallel computation is present in this particular workflow. The next question is a very important question. So the question says, explain how RDD is created in PySpark. So the first step for creating the RDD is apply SparkContext.parallelize method. So method parallelize of SparkContext is used to create the RDD by loading the existing connection from the driver and then parallelizing. So if the data is present in memory, we can only use this process. Then you apply the SparkContext.text file. So if we are going to read the data from the text file and then transfer it into RDD, so we can use this method. After that, you have the apply SparkContext dot whole text files. So the value of the file and the file path can be discovered using this method. Then you have the empty RDD with no partition using the SparkContext.empty RDD. So one empty RDD can be created by using this particular method. And last but not the least, you use the empty RDD with partition using the SparkContext.parallelize. So new empty RDD can be created without data in the partition. The next question is, can we create a data frame using an external database? So we can create the data frame locally in HDFC, HBase, MySQL, or any cloud platform. The next important question is, what is PySpark SQL? So Spark SQL is a module in Spark for structured data processing. So it offers data frames and also operates as a distributed SQL query engine. So PySpark SQL may also read data from existing Hive installations. So further, data extraction is possible using a SQL language. The next question is, do you think PySpark is similar to SQL? In SQL, database is maintained in tabular format, and same is the case in PySpark API, and like all the information is stored in data frames. So this data frame is immutable and stored in columns. So that is why it is quite similar to the SQL. The next question is, why use Akka in PySpark? So Spark makes use of Akka for scheduling primarily. After registration, all of the workers request a task to complete. So the master node simply assigns the work, and Spark uses Akka to communicate between the workers and the master in this particular case. The next question is, how is PySpark exposed in big data? So the PySpark API is attached with Spark programming model to Python and Apache Spark. So Apache Spark is open source software. So the most popular big data framework can scale up the process in a cluster and make it faster. So big data use distributed database system in memory data structures for smoothing the entire processing. So guys, with this, we have come to the end of the experienced candidates questions for PySpark. And now question number 37 onwards, we are covering the most frequently asked interview questions in PySpark. So these are relatively easier questions. So the question says, why do we use PySpark? So as we all know, PySpark is written in Python, and it is a set of libraries in real time for handling the large scale data. So it can be used through an open source framework known as the Apache Spark. So software industries are using PySpark as the Python API. The next question is, do you think PySpark and Python are similar? So yes, they are similar, as in they are directly related, but it is a Python-based API that is based on the Spark framework. So as a programming language, Python helps Spark manage the big data. The next question is, can we use PySpark as a programming language? So no, we cannot use PySpark as a programming language. Rather, you can use it as a framework. The next question is, which one is faster, PySpark or Pandas? So the processing speed depends upon the platform we are using to manage the vast amount of data or big data. So as PySpark is easy to use through inbuilt API, and this is the reason why it is faster. However, Pandas is not running with an API, and as a result, the rate is slower than PySpark. The next question is, why is PySpark helpful for machine learning? So as PySpark is working with machine learning on a distributed database system, so they can work together efficiently. So we can use PySpark in extensive data analysis by using machine learning algorithms and Python. So it also runs smoothly with BI tools such as Tableau. Moreover, we can run different machine learning algorithms due to the PySpark ML library. The next question is, what do you think PySpark is important in data science? So there are basically two important pillars of data science, which is Python and machine learning. So PySpark is built in Python, as we all know, and it has the interface and inbuilt environment to use Python and machine learning algorithms both. So this is the reason PySpark is an essential tool in data science. So once we process the data set, the prototype models will be converted into production grade workflows. The next question is, name a few of the companies that are using PySpark. So there are many companies from different domains such as e-commerce, banking, IT, retail that are using the PySpark. A few of them are Trivago, which is into traveling, Amazon, which is an e-commerce website. Then you also have Walmart, which is quite similar to Amazon. Then you have the Runtastic, Sanofi, and so on. The next question is, what are the different ML library tools that are available in Spark? So MLlib can perform machine learning in Apache Spark, and the different MLlib tools that are available in Spark are ML algorithms, featureization, pipelines, persistence, and utilities. The next question is, explain the function of SparkCore. So SparkCore is the base engine for distributed data processing and large-scale parallel computation. So SparkCore performs vital functions like memory management, fault tolerance, job scheduling and monitoring, and interaction with storage systems. So furthermore, additional libraries built at the top of the core allows diverse SQL and machine learning workloads. The next question is, list the main attributes used in SparkConf. So guys, as you can see on the screen, these are the important attributes that are used in SparkConf. The first one is set, for which you have the key and the value. So this basically sets the configuration property. Then you have the set master value, which sets the master URL. Then you have the set app name value, which sets the application name. And then you have the get key and the default value none. So basically it gets the configuration value of a key, and by default this value is none. So guys, with this we have come to the end of this session on PySpark interview questions. I hope you have enjoyed this session and you have understood whatever questions that we have discussed here. If at all you have any doubts or queries related to the questions that we have just discussed, so you can write your queries in the comment section and we will try to resolve them as early as possible. So guys, I wish you all the very best for your upcoming interview and thank you so much for being with us.